Hello everyone, welcome to yet another interesting session by IntelliPad. In today's session, we will discuss why Splunk, what is Splunk and its components, the working mechanism of Splunk and the use case, hands-on exercise to input the data from a local machine, and career opportunities in Splunk. So before moving to why we need Splunk, let us actually see what Splunk is. So have you heard of the word Splunk? Splunk is a software or tool that is used to analyze the machine data. But have you ever thought that why do we have to analyze the machine data? You must be aware of the exponential growth in machine data over the last decade. This was mainly because of the growing number of machines and the usage of IoT devices. And analyzing the data is needed because the solution to different problems is hidden in machine data. Analyzing this machine data will also help us to understand the customer behavior and the requirement, which will in turn help us to provide better service. This machine data will help us to alert the system admins about any security issues and system failures. Analyzing machine data also helps us to improve machine functionality. However, analyzing machine data is not a simple task. So how do we do that? Consider that you're working as a system administrator in some organization. So in this organization, the data can be generated from different sources, such as sensors, network devices, cloud services, Internet of Things, and mobile services. And the data generated from these resources will be in the form of unstructured machine data. For example, machine data looks something like this. Let us say there's a failure on one of the systems and you have to find the solution for it. It will be very difficult for you to find out in which step exactly the hardware failed the program. So machine data is not only complex to understand, it is also in an unstructured format, and it is also not suitable for making analysis or visualization. So what do you think? How can this be resolved? So in this case, we need a tool that understands machine data and helps us in identifying where exactly the hardware or software has failed. So as we have discussed already, this can be resolved by using Splunk. So Splunk is a tool in which the machine data is processed to extract the human readable form of data. And this will help us to analyze the problems. So whenever we are looking for state of any software or hardware, we have to search for the log file. Now Splunk can be seen as Google for log files. That is, Splunk makes machine data available to infrastructure. The primary components of Splunk are forwarders, indexers, and search heads. Forwarders are responsible for collecting the data and forwarding it to other Splunk instances and indexers. Indexers help us to store and index the data. However, we cannot just access the data from indexers. We need to have search heads which will help us to analyze, visualize, and report the data. Now, Splunk will help the users to leverage the machine data in analyzing the system performance, identifying the failure conditions in the system, monitoring the business metrics, searching and investigating the reason, visualizing the data and creating dashboards of results, and storing the data for future references. Now let us see how Splunk works. So we have data that is stored in machines, which can be in the form of logs, databases, views, or API clauses. On the other hand, we have users who act as information dividers from various sources. So the business operations need graphs, images, pivots, and dashboards to make better decisions for business. So what do you think? What is it exactly that acts as a bridge between data and users? Yes, it is indexes. Or you can think that it is a table of databases. And this is how data is stored in the machines. So once we store the data, we can extract the data using the search processing language or SPL. So all the data in the machine will now be stored in the form of events. Once this data is retrieved from the machine, you can edit, calculate, or concert according to your needs. And this technology is not only easy to implement, but also provides a wide spectrum of services to its users. Some of those are indexing data, facilitating searching and investigating, mapping knowledge to search, scheduling alert, and preparing and sharing Splunk reports. Nowadays, we have seen storage devices get better and better over the years. So we have also seen processors become more efficient with every aging day, but there is no data movement. So Splunk is a handy tool to bring in data movement. Now you might be wondering why organizations are opting for Splunk. Well, here are some of the benefits of Splunk. It started working as Google for log files. That is, you can input the data in any form. Splunk searches using simpler terms with the help of search processing language. It does not require any backend or any database as it stores data directly in the Splunk file system. Not a single point of failure is encountered. So apart from the above mentioned highlights of this technology, there are a lot of features such as fast installation, easy scalability, retention without losing granularity, and so on that give this technology a distinctive competitive edge. Some of the major Splunk customers are Vodafone, Domino's, ING Bank, and New York Airbrake. So Vodafone is a telecommunication company where a huge amount of customer data is generated. Hence, Vodafone uses Splunk to manage this big data to optimize and provide better customer support. Domino's has also opted for Splunk to understand the customer behavior. ING Bank is using Splunk to troubleshoot the key apps and insights into customer behavior. New York Airbrake saved almost $1 billion in a month by implementing Splunk. Now let us move on to the use case and see how Splunk helps organizations to resolve their issues technically. You might be aware that Domino's Pizza is a fast food giant, but are you aware of the difficulties and challenges they were facing? So they wanted to understand the customer needs and cater to them more effectively by using big data. Domino's database used to generate a lot of unstructured data, which led to difficulties in maintaining them, such as errors in manual searches, differences in preferences, and many more. So this was resolved by Splunk. Splunk helped Domino's to search the data faster, monitor the performance, and get better insights. It helped Domino's to set up interactive apps, get real-time feedback from the customer, analyze different payment methods, and monitor the performance of the in-house sales team. Splunk's widespread applications and ease of installation have made it immensely popular in the field of big data analytics. From a low-profile big data company to one of the most popular technologies, it has been successful in creating a solid impact on the leading tech players. Now, let us look at the hands-on exercise where we learn how to add data in the Splunk tool. So to do that, we would have to log into the Splunk administration. In settings, you see there are two options. One is add data, which obviously helps us to add data and also to monitor the local and remote resources. Then we have a DMC or Distributed Management Console, about which we'll talk in detail later on. So in add data, you see there are knowledge objects. These could be searches, reports, and alerts. Then we have data models, which are basically structured formats with which we can build dashboards and reports. And after that, third in the list, we have event types, that is different type of records which get registered, which help us in optimizing our searches. Then we have tags, fields, lookups, and multiple other options, and we'll look at all of them later on. Next, we have some system settings like server settings, server controls, and licensing. Then under data, we have data inputs, forwarding and receiving, indexes, report acceleration, and source types. Then we have distributed environment. So if you're using multiple servers or multiple hosts, then we'll be using all of these options. So finally, we have users and authentication, that is access controls. So let's go ahead and start with data input. Since it's a standalone system, we are not specifically looking for a remote source from where the data is coming into the system. So what we can do is we can actually configure some local logs. So you can see there are multiple options over here: remote event log collection, local event log collection, files and directories, and local performance monitoring. And since this is actually a Windows environment, there are some readily configured files available. So we'll go to files and directories. So by default, Splunk creates some indexes for its internal data repository, and these are used to assess the application health. So you can see there are mappings of some of these directories like Splunk version, and all of this directory data is going to the destination index with a specific source type like Splunk version over here. So you can see Splunk version, introspection, Splunk, pool, stash new, and each of them is mapped to a destination index. And not only this, there are also multiple files for each of these paths. So you can see data is being populated in each of these indexes. Now, since we want to add our data into this, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add our own local inputs. Now, instead of local inputs, we can also have forwarded inputs too. And since we're not using any remote resources, and since this is just a standalone machine without which we cannot have access to any remote machine, so we'll just be using the local event log collection. So these are the available Windows logs which can be collected and taken leverage of, and these are the available indexes. We can actually create our own indexes, that can also be done. So first, let's select some logs from specific sector of this machine. So I actually want application logs, and we'll map this application logs to the main index. So just to reiterate it, I am selecting all of the application logs and I am storing or mapping them to the main index. And let's actually go ahead and save this. So I have an index now which is readily accessing data from the application logs. Now I'll go to indexes and see how many indexes are actually there and what is the current size of those indexes. So as you can see, these are the list of indexes that are already there. Any index starting with underscore is actually a Splunk internal index, and these won't show up readily in our searches. So what do I exactly mean by that? Now let me ask you a question. Why are we using Splunk? So we are using Splunk to aggregate the data, optimize it, and store it so that when users have to correlate some events and search for some specific events, then they can write their query and get the data out from the Splunk database. But what is happening is there is a lot of internal data getting stored, and we don't want that internal data to be shown in the Splunk searches. And that is why indexes which actually store internal data start with an underscore so that we can distinguish it from other data. But history, main, Splunk logger, and summary will show up if the data is in your search query. And we can actually also see the event count for all of these indexes. So these are all the event counts over here. And since we have mapped the application data to the main index, all of the data is stored here. So starting from 5 months to 23 days ago. And this is how we bring the local data into Splunk. And this actually brings us to the end of this demo. Now, Splunk is one of the booming technologies. Its growing demand and suitability to candidates having diverse educational background makes it an attractive field of opportunities. So as you can see in the graph, there is a drastic change in the requirement of Splunk professionals from 2012. Some of the prominent Splunk job titles are Splunk Architect, Splunk Admin, and Splunk Developer. So the time is ripe to upskill in Splunk career opportunities that come your way. Learning this technology will ensure your success in the near future. So what are you waiting for? Join our IntelliPath Splunk training course today and become a Splunk professional. This course will help you to understand the weblog analysis, design reports, and charts. You'll also learn how server configuration is carried out in Splunk deployment. Let's summarize what we have discussed in today's session. We started with the need of Splunk, and then we saw what is Splunk and its components. We also discussed the working mechanism and saw the use case for Splunk. And then we looked at the different career options available in Splunk and various organizations who use Splunk technology. And finally looked at the hands-on exercise to input the data. So thank you for watching this video. For all queries, feel free to contact us.
Thank you for watching our video. Do like and share it. If you have any questions, comment below and we'll respond to them as soon as possible. Also, do subscribe to IntelliPad channel so that you can keep yourself updated on the latest technologies. You can also go through other related videos in our playlist. And for more information, visit our website. Keep learning, keep improving.